We now come to sequel 96, the famous 1913 Kikuyu Town Missionaries Conference controversy. The controversy pinned the bishops of Uganda and the bishops of Mombasa and the Bishop of Mombasa against the accuser, the Bishop of Zanzibar. And the case had to be argued in Canterbury. It was not a simple matter, and that's why it's famous. Welcome. This is the Church of Uganda at 150 years, a celebration. We are celebrating early to create awareness. The author of these sequels, I'm Christopher Amos Chikomeko Ntambi. This particular controversy is well documented, especially for theology students across the world, especially those theological institutions that are not Roman Catholic. So whether you went to the United States or Canada or Great Britain or Nigeria or South Africa or Australia or India, as long as you are in a theological college which is more of a Protestant church or organization, then this is a very famous topic for the theology students. The Kikuyu Town Missionaries Conference controversy of 1913. I'll therefore tackle it in detail in this particular sequel. As you remember, in Buganda, there had been the death of the Reverend Duta Kitakule, one of the pioneer priests, and the burial was held very quickly to enable the funeral service, actually. The funeral service was held very quickly to enable the bishop to travel for the Kikuyu conference. Kikuyu is a small town east of Nairobi, on the highway to Uganda. And also, the Kikuyu people are the largest ethnic tribe in Kenya. But in a small town of Kikuyu was the Church of Scotland mission, known as the Church of the Torch, Thogoto, Kikuyu. And on the 17th of June 1913, the Missionary Society's conference was officially opened. And the venue was that Kikuyu Scotland mission station. In attendance were the Anglican Missionary Societies, the Methodist Missionary Societies, and the Presbyterians Missionary Societies, as long as they originated from Great Britain. So there was that common factor. You are a missionary society, fine, but do you originate from Britain? Then you qualified for the conference. And in attendance were therefore two bishops of the Church Missionary Society, Bishop John Jamieson Willis of Uganda Diocese and Bishop William George Peel of Mombasa Diocese. On the agenda of the interdenominational conference at the Kikuyu town was to attempt and form a federation of the missionary societies. The objective of doing so was to reach an ultimate union of the native Christians into one body. And therefore the conference began, the deliberations were held, and on the 19th of June 1913, the following three proposals were adopted for approval by the respective missionary societies at large once the delegates returned home and delivered the report of the conference. The first proposal was that they are to accept the Bible, the Apostles' Creed, and the Nicene Creed. Number 2, they were to accept each other's baptism, although as long as that baptism was in the name of the Trinity. Remember, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. Then the third proposal was to form a common prayer to be adopted based on the Anglican Book of Common Prayer. And so, on the 19th of June, 1913, when the conference was closing, a United Communion service was held in the Church of Scotland Mission, in the Church of Scotland Mission, that church which I mentioned earlier, the Church of the Torch, Togoto Kikuyu, within the Church of Scotland Mission station. And that Holy Communion was solemnized by 2 bishops, Willis of Uganda and Peel of Mombasa, and they were assisted by the Reverend J.E. Hampshire of the Church of Scotland. The order of the Anglican Church prayer book for the Holy Communion service was followed. And then the bishops offered Holy Communion to non-Anglicans as well. And finally, the service came to a conclusion. The delegates left Kikuyu town with very high hopes of an operational federation once it got approval by their respective societies and headquarters. But there was trouble. The Bishop of Zanzibar, the Right Reverend Bishop Dr. Frank Weston, who belonged to the University Mission, which was High Church, was not present at Kikuyu town. Although he was not there, he was not amused on getting a report about the Missionaries Conference, and he quickly denounced Bishops Willis and Peel as heretics. Now, a heretic is a dissenter from established religious dogma. And it is this denunciation, it is this reaction of the Bishop of Zanzibar, Dr. Frank Weston, that historians refer to as the 1913 Kikuyu Missionary Conference controversy. So the controversy began with Dr. Frank Weston. So he wrote an open letter to Canterbury, which was dated the 5th of August 1913, strongly protesting to the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Most Reverend Randall Davidson. The Bishop of Zanzibar advocated for a charge, to charge the 2 bishops, for a charge of heresy and schism, and I will explain the two. A charge of heresy is when you charge somebody for carrying out a provocative theory strongly at variance with established customs of the church, whereas the charge of schism is a charge for carrying out a rift or for carrying out a break in an organization, causing 2 distinct and separate functions to emerge. For example, today we have GAFCON. Although the GAFCON is not yet recognized as a schism, it is highly believed that this April of 2023, that is what is going to happen, that GAFCON will formally become a schism from Canterbury or from the Lambeth Conference. Now, I also now want to take the chance of explaining these university missions, although I've already done that in circle number 1 and 2. But let me redo it now that they have appeared so many times in our celebrations of the Church of Uganda as High Church. Who were these? To whom Dr. Frank belonged. The university's missions to Central Africa was an English Overseas Missionary Society formed in response to the appeal of David Livingstone in the Senate House of Cambridge University in 1857. It was a strong Anglo-Catholic society. That's what we refer to as high church. They do things like Catholics, although they are Anglicans. The way they put on their liturgy, their symbolism, their traditions, their rituals, a lot of it is Anglo-Catholic. That's why they are called high church. Now, they took the Anglican Church to Central Africa, and Central Africa are countries like Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Malawi, all that is Central Africa. Their first bishop was called the Bishop of Zambezi region, and he was based in Cape Town, and his name was Charles Mackenzie. When he died, the title Zambezi Diocese was changed, and the several dioceses broke up. For example, there was the Bishop of Zanzibar, then there was the Bishop of Nyasaland, and then there was the Bishop of Northern Rhodesia, and so on. Now, the cathedral in Zanzibar, for the diocese in Zanzibar, was built on a site of previous slave trade market or slave trade market shops for slaves, and it became later a major tourist attraction up to this very day. So Bishop Dr. Frank Weston was the Bishop of Zanzibar from 1908 all the way to 1924. It is therefore that high church bishop who wrote a letter to Canterbury advocating for a charge of heresy and schism against the Bishop of Uganda and the Bishop of Mombasa for what they did at Kikuyu. What did they really do? We shall find out very soon. The Bishop of Oxford at that time, Dr. Gore, supported the Bishop of Zanzibar, calling the Kikuyu town meeting subversive of order and doctrine. The meeting proposals were strictly intolerable, according to him. He concluded that way. There were also other clergy in support of Bishop of Zanzibar, and these were Canon Mason of Canterbury and the Reverend W.J. Knox of Little. And on the 29th of December 1913, they had gathered 600 signatures at Passy House to back the effort of the Bishop of Zanzibar in seeking for a trial of the heretic bishops, Peel and Willis. But another group of bishops, led by retired Alfred Tucker of Uganda, supported the proposal of a federation of British missionary societies in East Africa. And so there was debate in the British press for months and months and months. The Archbishop of Canterbury, the Most Reverend Randall Davidson, advised that the irregular communion service, such as the Kikuyu town one during the conference, should be abstained from because they were liable, such communion services were liable to misunderstandings. But as for the charge of heresy and schism, he, as the Archbishop of Canterbury, was to be advised by a consultative body of 14 bishops who had been elected at the last Lambeth conference to do other jobs, but now here was a job they were going to do. And they were therefore to meet the following year in 1914 in the month of July. So the Archbishop explained that the body, that particular consultative body, was not to be a court of bishops. It was to remain consultative. But that's exactly why he wanted them to do the job. That despite their consultative nature, he put this issue before them, and he gave them two issues. Issue number one, whether a missionary society federation contravened any principle of the church order. That was number one. Number two, whether the Holy Communion to non-Anglicans was consistent with the principles accepted by the Anglican Church. Now, I want now to stretch it to 1914. In February 1914, the Bishop of Zanzibar, the Right Reverend Bishop Dr. Frank Weston, visited London to press for his case. At the same time, the Reverend John Jamieson Willis visited London, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, Most Reverend Randall Davison, took time to exhaust the subject matter. He then issued an interesting statement saying, "Looking carefully at present-day facts and conditions, and having had a discussion between Dr. Frank Weston and Bishop John Jamieson Willis, I have no hesitation in saying that, in my opinion, a diocesan bishop acts rightly in sanctioning, when circumstances seem to call for it, the admission to Holy Communion of a devout Christian man. After all, the Kikuyu town proposal for a federation of missionaries had not yet been endorsed by the mother missionary societies. That was the next step. So in short, even before the consultative body gave its verdict, the Archbishop of Canterbury seemed, after talking to these two, to have been in support of Willis and Beale. They were free to administer Holy Communion as far as they were concerned that they are doing so to a devout Christian man. And as for the proposal for the federation, it was not conclusive. They were to get advice from their mother bodies. Okay, finally the consultative body also delivered its verdict. This was later on in July of 1914, after they had met in London. The consultative body of 14 bishops had sat under the chairmanship of the Archbishop of Canterbury, and they agreed with him. Bishop John Jamieson Willis of Uganda and Bishop William George Peel of Mombasa Diocese were therefore not found guilty of heresy and schism, although they were never tried anyway. The Bishop of Zanzibar, the Right Reverend Bishop Dr. Frank Weston, after having lost the case, promised not to press for a full trial, and he was granted his wish. He, however, declared that he will not be in communication with the Diocese of Mombasa and the Diocese of Uganda. Brethren, that is the famous Kikuyu Town controversy, or Kikuyu Town Missionaries Conference controversy. As these sequels continue, we shall see how these particular consultative proceedings disrupted work as far as Bishop Willis was concerned in Uganda. But that is for future sequels. May the good Lord bless us all.